Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. Louisiana was another Group of 5 team that surprised a lot of people last year. I think a lot of people saw them as a favorite in the Sun Belt Conference, but I don't think many saw the Ragin Cajuns going 10-1, including a 17-point victory over Iowa State in their season opener. The Ragin Cajuns clock in at number 18 in our early Gridiron Expert Top 25. Today we're going to give you a brief outlook of their 2021 season and then take a look at their schedule. Again, not predicting their schedule, just analyzing what Billy Napier's squad is up against this upcoming season. So again, we kind of told you how they did last year, 10-1. The only loss coming at home by 3 to Coastal Carolina. When you see how good the Chanticleers did last year, you realize that's really not that bad of a loss. And the Ragin Cajuns, unfortunately, didn't get their shot at revenge in the Sun Belt Championship game. Levi Lewis returns at quarterback for Louisiana. That's huge. Getting a veteran quarterback back under center is huge for a team, especially when they lose their top 2 rushers in Elijah Mitchell and Trey Regis. So having him there is going to be huge. Someone's going to have to pick up the slack in the backfield, but Lewis, of course, going to be the undisputed leader of this team going into 2021. Outside of those 2 losses in the backfield, though, Louisiana doesn't lose that much. They returned 17 starters from last year's squad that, again, won 10 games. They are without a doubt the favorite in the Sun Belt West Division. And while I do lose a few handful of starters on the defensive side of the ball, a few key players, especially along the defensive line and linebacking core, it's nothing too drastic to suggest that Louisiana is going to have a major drop-off. When you take a look at their schedule here, guys, take a look at their schedule. First off, that game against Texas is very intriguing, and we'll touch on that in a second. But it should be noted that they do not play Coastal Carolina. They do not play Coastal Carolina, and that's big news. That is a game that I don't think many people want to see on their schedule, a team that not many people want to see on their schedule. So they do not draw the Chanticleers from the East, meaning the only time they might play each other is in the Sun Belt Championship game, like they should have last year. So that's the first good news, sign of good news for Billy Napier's squad. They opened up the season at Texas, and if you watched our video the other day, we talked about this game in the Longhorn schedule preview, about how Louisiana could stroll into Austin as the higher-ranked team. How many times can you say that you see a Sun Belt team that is higher ranked than the Power 5 team that they are playing, especially a Power 5 team like Texas? Very rarely, if ever, does that happen. So there's a possibility that could happen on September 4th, and we know that this is the beginning of a new era for Texas. Steve Sarkisian now taking over down in Austin, and we saw what Louisiana did last year in Ames, beating Iowa State by 17. This is not a game where the Ragin Cajuns are just going to roll over, give up, and say, Texas, you got the win, we'll move on and try to win our Sun Belt games. They're going to go in there and play to win the game, and Louisiana's going to go in there and expect to win that game, even though most people will not. That's going to be a closer game than I think a lot of people think, and one of the more underrated games of Week 1. So a huge opportunity for Billy Napier's squad in Week 1 at Texas. Again, this is a team where you could say that Louisiana is a New Year's Six bowl contender. Yes, they have a lot of competition this year, but getting a win at Texas, what would be a nationally ranked Texas team, would be huge for their resume when it's all said and done, if, of course, they can run the table the rest of the way. Nichols, Ohio, Georgia Southern, South Alabama, all those guys they played right before their bye week. None of those are too daunting, I would say, for Louisiana. Now, again, anything can happen in the Sun Belt. You can be the 15th ranked team in the country, the 10th ranked team in the country, and then fall to an unranked 2-5 Sun Belt opponent. That's just how wild that conference is. Or even if you don't fall to them, suffer a lot of scares to those teams. So Louisiana, even if they were to beat Texas, or even if they weren't, play them close, whatever, cannot afford to overlook any team within the conference. South Alabama, of course, dealing with a new head coach in Kane Womack. Georgia Southern, I think the scariest team out of this little stretch here, just because of the triple option that they run and the fact that the Eagles almost beat the Ragin Cajuns last year. Louisiana surviving 20-18. So watch out for that game, especially with it being on the road. But it's not until you get after their bye week that I think you see the key stretch for Louisiana. It's that key stretch that's going to really define their season. Like we've said, for all the other teams we've discussed already, there's usually one key stretch that defines the season. It's going to make or break their season. That's so crucial to their success, so crucial to getting to a bowl game, so crucial to winning the division, playoff hopes, whatever it may be. And it starts for the Ragin Cajuns right here against Appalachian State on a Tuesday night, I should add. Last year, Louisiana went on the road, took down App State 24-21. Absolutely thrilling game. Survived that game by 3. So App State here now adds Chase Bryce, the Duke transfer quarterback. They're going to have a solid run game per usual and a very underrated defense. It's very good that Louisiana gets a bye week prior to this game. A lot of time to rest. 10 days of rest from their South Alabama game to the game against the Mountaineers. That's huge for them, and they get them at home. They then travel to Arkansas State, who they beat 27-20 last year. Arkansas State now under new management with Butch Jones, a big-time hire. Butch Jones coming in as an analyst at Alabama, but we know he was the former head coach at Tennessee, so brings in some SEC experience, has a solid quarterback in Lane Hatcher. Don't expect A-State, who had a rough year last year, the final year under Blake Anderson, don't expect them to stay down. Butch Jones is instilling a very strict but good culture up in Jonesboro. And they're going to be right back, I think, in the Sun Belt title hunt right now in 2021. They're not going to have to wait very long. A-State on the road on a Thursday night. Certainly not a game that Louisiana can overlook either. So they have two very difficult back-to-back opponents here, both in the middle of the week, I should say, even though there's a 9-day break in between them, but both in the middle of the week that they could get caught sleeping on. Can't afford to overlook those. And again, it's a 4-game stretch here. So these two, and then Texas State and Georgia State. Yes, both of those are at home for Louisiana, but last year against the Bobcats, Louisiana only won 44-34. So, yes, they won by 10, but they had about 34 points against Texas State. And this team is only going to get better. This team is only going to get better under Jake Spavital as their new head coach. He's been there for now, I believe, entering year 3. The Bobcats, yes, went 2-10 in 2020, but 4 of their 10 losses were by 1 possession. They're getting there. They're a young team, but they're going to learn how to finish. The game is at Louisiana. That's the one thing the Ragin Cajuns have going for them. But Texas State, I think, is slowly but surely on the rise in terms of being more competitive within the conference. And then Georgia State on November 4th, Louisiana barely escaped them, 34-31 in overtime. That was a game where I think the Ragin Cajuns got a little bit of a high after beating Iowa State. I'm not saying they went in there too confident. They beat Iowa State, strolled into Atlanta to play Georgia State, and nearly lost that game. Again, it's one of those things where you can beat an elite opponent, like Louisiana did, and can very well lose to a Sun Belt opponent. You can beat Texas. You can lose to Georgia Southern. You can beat Iowa State. You can lose to Georgia State. You never know what can happen in what many say is the Fun Belt. But the game against Georgia State, lucky for them, is at home, but Sean Elliott is still the head coach for the Panthers. They usually have a pretty solid offense, and their defense is always one that's relatively underrated. Sean Elliott, his passion and love for his players in the game is unmatched. Always has his team ready to go, and he'll have them ready to go for this one, especially if Louisiana is still a top 25 team and in prime position to make the Sun Belt Championship game. Everybody in the conference would love to play spoiler. So again, I really view this 4-game stretch from October 12th to November 4th as being the biggest stretch for the Ragin Cajuns this season, because after that you have Troy, Liberty, ULM. The Liberty game is very intriguing. Liberty game is going to be a lot of fun to see. This offense of Billy Napier is going up against Hugh Freeze's offense at Liberty with Malik Willis versus Levi Lewis. It's going to be a very, very fun game and could be a top 25 showdown. But it has no implications on Louisiana's Sun Belt title hopes. It's a non-conference game. So while it might be fun to watch, while obviously they'd love to get that resume-boosting win, while it is a win that if they were to beat Texas, and if they were to be undefeated, somehow undefeated going to this Liberty game, would be another huge resume booster in terms of helping them get to a New Year's Six bowl game, it does nothing for Sun Belt title hopes. And that's why it's not kind of grouped in this 3-game stretch here. Because Troy, yes, is improving. Yes, could give Louisiana a fight towards the end of the year, especially also right before Liberty, maybe looking ahead to that. ULM, nothing to worry about there. Louisiana beat them 70-20 last year. There's not going to be a 50-point differential from 2020 to 2021. So this 4-game stretch, again, is the key for the Ragin Cajuns here. Yes, they might lose to Texas. Yes, they are probably not going to go 10-1 again. There's a very good chance they're not going to have a 1-loss season again. The FPI has them going 7-5. The Football Power Index says the Ragin Cajuns will go 7-5, and it's one of those where I disagree with that. I think there's too much talent for Billy Napier to go 7-5. They are the Sun Belt West Division favorites. They are a favorite to win the conference, probably them and Coastal. 7-5 seems a little harsh to me. Yeah, maybe they lose 2 or 3 games. But I don't know if I'd go that far quite yet. Again, we're not making any predictions, but something feels a little off here with the amount of talent that is returning and really with how favorable the schedule lines up. That 4-game stretch we talked about, difficult. 3 of the 4 are at home, though. You really can't beat that. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at The Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, hit that notification button to get notifications for every single upload coming your way here on the channel. Again, we're doing schedule previews for every single one of our top 25 teams. You never know which team is coming up next, and you won't know unless you hit that notification button. So go ahead and hit it. Hit the bell. Also, make sure to check out everything down in the description below. Exclusive content and offers for you year-round for you guys, the die-hard college football fans. So make sure to go give that a look. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.